Welcome to my first bracketology video of the season, and I couldn't think of a more perfect time to start my bracketology content this season, as we are coming off of a very massive week in college basketball. A plethora of top 10 matchups. Football season is coming to a close as the Super Bowl is on Sunday, and that is when a lot of people get more into college basketball. And we are 6 weeks away from Selection Sunday and the bracket being revealed. And the bubble watch is going to get more and more intense with each and every single week that passes by leading up to the big reveal of the bracket. And with my bracketology content, I usually just like to cover the bubble watch. And I like to focus on Joe Lunardi as I admire and respect his track record. On Friday, his last four byes were Texas, Providence, Texas A&M, and Seton Hall. His last four in were Memphis, Nebraska, Boise State, and Colorado. His first four out were Florida, Washington State, Gonzaga, and Butler. His next four out were Virginia, Cincinnati, Villanova, and Oregon. But about a day later, about a day or two later, Saturday or Sunday, I think I noticed a bit of a flaw in his bracketology, which I'll get to that in a moment. His last four byes were Mississippi State, St. John's, Boise State, and Texas A&M. But here's where his flaw is, in my opinion. The last four in, he has Florida, Seton Hall, Providence, and Butler. And what I'm not understanding is, how does he have Florida in his first four out on Friday, and then a day or two later, he has Florida in his last four in, even though Florida had lost to Texas A&M? That's what I'm not understanding here. I don't know if there is metrics that he used to determine Florida still moving into that last four in line despite being first four out before losing a game to Texas A&M. But moving on though, his first four out, Washington State, Virginia, Gonzaga, Cincinnati. His next four out, Colorado, Memphis, Oregon, Villanova. And this was off of his Twitter post. The next four in line after that, Wake Forest, Xavier, Princeton, and Nevada. And I personally think that Princeton isn't going to even be in the conversation if they don't win the Ivy League. As I don't think that Princeton would be in consideration for an at-large bid to the committee. But some big winners for the week. I'd say the biggest winner of everybody is Butler, with wins over Villanova and Creighton. And that is a big reason why Butler is right now in that field right now, according to Joe Lunardi and myself. I do agree with him on that. I think Butler belongs in the field right now. Boise State with a win over New Mexico. Boise State in the last four byes, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, but after this, I'm going to have 15 matchups of the week that are going to affect the bubble watch. And it's a big week for Boise State to put themselves safely in the tournament. Texas with a win over TCU. If they would have been able to win against Houston in overtime earlier in the week, Texas would be the big winner of the week. And I do think people are misunderstanding Texas a little bit. As Texas right now, I do understand if you want to say they are struggling right now. How Texas is not as consistent right now as people would have thought going into the year, considering Texas just made the Elite Eight last season. But Texas, they are playing a very tough schedule right now. And that is what happens when you are in a competitive conference like the Big 12. And when Texas plays Iowa State this week, it will be their 6th consecutive top 25 opponent faced. Nebraska with the win over Wisconsin this week, a big win for Nebraska. But Nebraska couldn't take advantage against Illinois on Sunday, a loss in overtime. But Texas and Nebraska right now, they are both safely in the field, in my opinion. But Nebraska, they continue their struggles on the road, and that is the current narrative for Nebraska right now, is they just can't seem to win big-time games on the road. Nebraska, they have very good wins against Wisconsin and Purdue, just to name a few. But can they win on the road? And when you get into tournament play, if you haven't won on the road, it may be a very tough time to muster up a win in the tournament. But there is still a lot of time left from now until Selection Sunday. The biggest loss of the week goes to Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin is safely in the field, but as far as seeding wise, there were talks about Wisconsin being on the 2 line, but with losses to Nebraska and Purdue, I think that they could fall all the way down to maybe the 4 line. Maybe the 3 is where they really will fall to, but I would not be surprised if the bracket came out if Wisconsin was a 4 seed, in my opinion. I also want to point out that I do feel like Kansas this week, I think they definitely played into the 2 line. I do think that if they do win the Big 12 tournament, they will be a 1 seed. I wanted to point that out. Another big loss this week, not a good week for Providence. Losses to UConn and Villanova, although UConn is the number 1 team in the country. But Providence, they are on the bubble. And when you're on the bubble, you've got to bring your A game every single game. Kentucky, a bad week for them. Losses to Florida and Tennessee. And Kentucky, they play Gonzaga this week, which I will get to in a moment. But here are my 15 biggest matchups of the week that will impact the bubble. It all begins tonight, Miami and Virginia. Virginia right now, they are in the first 4 out according to Joe Lunardi, but I feel like Virginia does belong. Virginia is on a 6-game winning streak, and for Virginia, as long as they keep on winning the games you're supposed to win, they're going to be in the field. Plus, they're going to have games coming up in the next few weeks where they will be able to boost their resume. Right now, Virginia is 2nd in the ACC, but as long as Virginia keeps winning games, they'll be in. On Tuesday, Butler and UConn, number 1 UConn. This would be massive for Butler if they can go on the road and pull off the upset against the number 1 team in the country. That would definitely boost up their resume. That would, in my opinion, put Butler in that last 4 bye category. Nevada and Utah State. Nevada, they are next in line as far as the next 4 of the next 4 out. If Nevada can start peaking at the right time, they could make some noise in these last few weeks. They could have an argument to get into the tournament. Boise State and Colorado State, also on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Villanova and Xavier, as Xavier is in that next 4 of the next 4 out, while Villanova is in the next 4 out. Whoever loses that game, it's going to be an uphill battle for them to make the field. Massive implications in that game. Creighton and Providence. Providence in the last 4 in right now, according to Joe Lunardi. And if they can pull off an upset against Creighton, boost up their resume. On Friday, San Diego State and Nevada, a big week for the Nevada Wolfpack. And a massive Saturday for the bubble. Providence and Butler, both right now in the last four in, according to Joe Lunardi. Auburn and Florida. Florida, they are in the last four in right now. Gonzaga and Kentucky, right now, Gonzaga in the first four out. And there are talks that if Gonzaga does not win their conference tournament, they could miss the tournament completely. As much as I want to say that maybe their name is what's going to put them in the tournament if they don't win their conference tournament, this is a potential lifeline for Gonzaga if they go on the road to Rupp Arena and upset Kentucky. And I'll be honest, if there was a time you want to play Kentucky in the middle of the season, it'd be right now, because Kentucky is coming off of a very bad week. Washington State and Oregon, both of those teams, they're in the bubble as well. Tennessee and Texas A&M. Texas A&M in the last four byes right now, according to Joe Lunardi. But if they can upset Tennessee, I think that would boost up the resume to safely in the tournament. Boise State and Utah State on Saturday, as well as Colorado and Arizona. Colorado in that next four out, but if they can get a signature win against Arizona on the road, it can do wonders for them. And the final matchup that I have as the biggest 15 matchups of the week, on Sunday, hours before the Super Bowl, Seton Hall and Villanova. Villanova right now is in the next four out category, but if they can go 2-0 this week, win both of their games, they could potentially get themselves into that first four out category. But if Villanova loses one or both of those games, I do feel like it could be an uphill battle for them to make the tournament. And that is all I have today. It's going to be a very interesting week in college basketball. In fact, these next 5 to 6 weeks will be, as we are looking forward to the reveal of the bracket and March Madness, the greatest 3 weeks in all of sports.